there's only one man to ask, and it is, of course, the chief political commentator at The Independent, Mr. John Rentoul. John, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Now, I just asked a yes or no question to Julian Jessup, an economist, and I said, will Rachel Reeves still be the Chancellor of the Exchequer when Labour lose the next election? He said no.
I agree with him. I don't think she will be, but I don't think she's going to go. I don't think she's going to go yet.
No, I mean, it seems to be a suggestion that she might go in March, at the end of March, or if not, she might go at the end of June. But the skids are definitely under her, aren't they?
No, I mean, I think, I think she probably doesn't have much longevity in her as a Chancellor, but I mean, I wouldn't expect her to go until next year or the year after that.
Really?
Well, I mean, it would be disastrous for Keir Starmer to sack her.
Yeah.
Because he would be criticising himself. They have they're joined at the hip. They fought the election on a joint programme, and her mistakes are his mistakes.
Yeah.
He by sacking her would be criticising himself and undermining himself, and it would be complete disaster for the government. It's not going to happen.
But don't you remember when he said country first, party second?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's hard to say that it would be in the country's best interest to change Chancellor at this point.
I think it would be definitely in the country's best interest, and she appears to be taking the country down a very dark and dismal road, and she's taken the economy into a very bad place. The pound is crashing against the dollar, and gilts and the yields on those gilts are higher than they've been for a very, very long time. In fact, since the last Labour government was in.
Well, as you know, we disagree on that, Mike, because you were suggesting last week that Liz Truss would be a better option as Chancellor. I
didn't say that. No, I didn't say that, actually. No, we stopped arguing about it because you kept misinterpreting what I was saying. What I was actually saying was that Liz Truss had made some mistakes, but her mistakes were much more sort of criticised, shall we say, than Rachel Reeves. And what I find also interesting...
Because they were more serious mistakes.
But what I find also interesting is that you criticise Liz Truss, who wasn't the Chancellor. You don't criticise Kwasi Kwarteng, but you do say that Rachel Reeves is to blame for these problems rather than Keir Starmer. So you kind of have it both ways. If you're going to criticise Liz Truss, then this must be Keir Starmer's fault.
No, yes, absolutely. I criticise... I mean, that's the point. That's why Keir Starmer shouldn't sack Rachel Reeves, because they're in it together. And, when Liz Truss sacked Kwasi Kwarteng, he pointed out that, that would be the end of her, and 11 days later it was. Chancellors and prime ministers have to hang and fall together.
They do, but I mean, it's the Liz Truss budget and the Rachel Reeves budget, which doesn't quite add up, does it?
Well, no, but I mean that's just shorthand, isn't it? I mean, you introduced Liz Truss into the equation by saying that the things in the situation in the gilt market was worse than it was under Liz Truss. I pointed out that it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't want to repeat what we did last week because that would be boring. Because people listening last week already know that I won that argument. So let's move on to another one, which I could win today. All right. So you don't want to get rid of Rachel Reeves. What about Tulip Sadiq? You want to get rid of her?
Well, I think she should probably step down.
I think so.
There are enough questions being asked about her interests.
Yes.
But I mean, nothing actually untoward has been found so far. It just doesn't look great, and
but you're starting. But again, you can't keep going down that road of Keir Starmer's. We did everything within the rules. Well, I don't know if she did everything within the rules, or we certainly do know that the Bangladeshi investigators are interested in talking to her about what she may have been involved in.
Yeah, I think that all that is awkward, and she ought to step aside from her anti-corruption role at least.
I mean, you would think so, or at least change the name of it to corruption rather than anti-corruption, which might be a bit more accurate. But yeah, I mean, so again, we're at this situation where he's being assailed on all sides, and it's probably now worse this week than it was last week.
Well, no. I mean, there was an opinion poll last week saying that Labour and Reform were level. Things continue to be extremely difficult for the government. I mean, I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
No. But I mean, what we said last week was that there doesn't appear to be anything that you can put in the, remember that episode of Friends when Joey decided to put together a list of things that were good about going out with somebody and bad about going out with somebody. If you do something like that, in the good column, you haven't got very much, but you've got quite a lot in the bad column.
I don't remember that episode. It's
very good. Yeah, it's very good.
I need to go back to it.
Yeah, you have to. It's basically how do you work out whether going out with somebody is a good idea, and so you list all the good things about them and all the bad things about them, and you come to a conclusion at the end.
Well,
so
this is what the British people did in July last year. They decided that continuing with a Conservative government was a bad idea.
Yeah.
They didn't actually know very much about what a Labour government would do.
No.
But they calculated that it couldn't be worse than what the...
Well, I can tell you exactly how they did that, because the only thing they had in the good column was they're not Tories. That was it.
I mean, I agree. It was a rather weak basis. It was a rather weak basis for such a huge majority.
Yes.
Which is a bit misleading. And, you know, there are undoubtedly voters, I mean, the opinion polls tell us this, who regret that decision and who've decided that actually the Labour Party could be worse than the Conservatives in government. Although I think that's a bit of a stretch, because the Conservatives had run out of steam and run out of...
they had. Yeah, I mean,
and they left a terrible legacy to the Labour government, and no wonder the Labour government's having trouble struggling with dealing with it.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, and you're right. I mean, I would agree with you on this, that you know, the infrastructure of this country has been, you know, hopelessly neglected over time, that the Tories were in. You know, the prison service, the police, the NHS. You know, I'm not going to deny any of that, because the Tories were absolutely and utterly responsible for allowing much of it to run to rack and ruin, because they didn't pay attention. But by the end, my feeling about them was that they were less damaging to the country than Labour, because they kind of stopped doing anything. They just weren't really introducing anything, which wasn't ever going to last long. But so now Labour have come in and made it all a bit worse, though, because all the things that they have tinkered with, they haven't improved.
Well, I mean, I hate to agree with you.
I know.
But certainly, if I were looking for cabinet ministers to sack, I would be looking at what Bridget Phillipson is doing to our schools, rolling back a successful bipartisan agreement about what makes schools better over the past 20 years. I'd be looking at what Ed Miliband is doing to our energy policies, and I'd be looking at what Angela Rayner's doing to the labour market. I mean, gumming it up with more regulation and more so-called employment rights, which I think are not in the interests of actual employees. So, you know, if you're looking for cabinet ministers to sack, I mean, Rachel Reeves is actually doing broadly the right thing. I mean, I know you disagree with some of her policies, and I would go for a different mix of taxes to raise. But I would be looking at other cabinet ministers first.
Yes, and I think that's a good point. But equally, I mean, the latest news from Rachel Reeves' department is that they're going to go after the civil service, they're going to go after government departments, and they're going to try and slash spending in those departments, which, as you know, is notoriously difficult to do.
Well, yes, and we're also getting an awful lot of the first resort of scoundrels in government is to say they're going to attack government waste.
Yeah.
I mean,
next it'll be bonfire of the Quangos, won't it?
I know it is all feeble stuff, and I do think just plucking figures out of the air and saying we're going to save billions from the welfare budget. I mean, easy to say. And it would be easy for me to come on here and say, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's just not. I mean, you know, welfare is a really difficult problem, and it probably will cost more in the short term to solve it. Only I don't get a sense that you know, the government's got a grip on that either.
No.
Even though Liz Kendall is a fine minister who I'd want to keep.
I mean, the other problem, as you say, with Angela Rayner and these employment rights is on the front page of the Times today, which is that pubs could ban customers from speaking about contentious matters such as religious beliefs or transgender rights over fears of falling foul of these new Labour workers' rights reforms. Effectively, you know, they want to protect workers from harassment, which is fair enough. That's one thing.
Oh, I see.
But not actually from overhearing a conversation that they don't like. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That is absurd. And the idea that should be in employment rights legislation, I mean, that would be a serious curtailment of free speech, and I doubt if that's going to happen. I mean, I presume there's some poor drafting in some of that legislation. I mean, that bill is an absolute mess.
Yeah,
needs to be rewritten from start to finish, if not just dropped altogether.
Right.
But I mean, that kind of stuff reminds me of you know, notices I mean, I went to Sri Lanka a very long time ago, and there used to be notices in cafes saying discussion of religion and politics is forbidden.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and that was a country on the brink of a civil war. I mean, that kind of thing is totally alien to
yeah, it's straight out of 1984, isn't it?
Shouldn't be allowed here. I assume there's not much to that story, but.
Are you suggesting my colleagues on the Times are flamming a story up just to put it on the front page? It's a shocking indictment.
Possibly. I've never heard of journalists doing that, but if that is what is going on, then I think they should turn it down.
Listen, let's go back finally to the grooming gang story, because we talked about it a lot last week. You didn't think it was good to have an inquiry. We've now got one Labour MP who does think it's a good idea. Andy Burnham also thinks it's a good idea. And people are starting to say to me that they think Starmer will somehow shift slightly on this and do something. It might not be a full-on inquiry, but he's going to do something.
Yeah, no, I think that would be a perfectly sensible way of dealing with it, would be to have a very limited inquiry to deal with issues that people feel were not dealt with in the Alexis J inquiry.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't think that that public inquiries are. I mean, they're almost never a good thing. I mean, they're almost never required. They take too long. They spend a lot of public.
They're too broad as well.
Relitigating decisions that were taken in the heat of the moment and all the rest. But I mean, I don't have any objection to a very short, targeted look at some of the outstanding issues, if there are any.
Yeah, well, there are plenty, and I think that's a good idea.
Well, you say that. I think there's a lot of enforcement that needs to be done of findings of previous inquiries.
Yeah, well, there are also plenty of people that need to be asked questions about why they didn't do certain things when they should have done them, and I think that would be fair enough. But let me ask you one final one. We got a new president coming in on Monday, inauguration, Donald Trump, 47th president of the United States of America. Keir Starmer's not been invited. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, I think their relationship's rather difficult, isn't it? Donald Trump didn't seem to take very well to the idea of having Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador.
Yeah, can't blame him for that.
Washington. Well, I thought I could actually. I thought that was actually I thought that was a sign of respect to appoint someone so eminent and so qualified in matters of international.
Yeah, but I think the point is that they had said to the UK that they were quite happy with the person that was already there. And so effectively, by not doing what they had suggested they do, it's a kind of a snub to them, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Although we can't, we can't decide our ambassador on the basis of what another government wants. But yeah, we should take that into account. So that hasn't gone very well. I mean, I think their relationship is off to a rocky start.
Yes.
But I think the consolation in all this is that Donald Trump's bark is worse than his bite, and I think. Practicalities will continue to be worked on at a lower level. Yes, I dare say. Good to talk to you, John. Thank you very much indeed. John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator at The Independent there.